Hello, my friends. Inside a tiny room in France, a dying man whispered 5 heartbreaking words. The sadness will last forever. 2 days later, almost nobody cared that he died. But today, his paintings are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Some people say Vincent van Gogh was insane. Others say he was the greatest artist who ever lived. But here is the unbelievable truth. Before the world admired his paintings, people laughed at him. They called him strange, dangerous, crazy. He lived in poverty. He failed in love. He failed in work. He even cut off his own ear during a mental breakdown. And yet, this broken man painted beauty so powerful that more than a century later, people still stand in silence before his art and cry. This is not just the story of a painter. It is the story of loneliness, madness, obsession, rejection, and the terrifying price of genius. And yes, this story will help your English. You will hear emotional real-life English, powerful vocabulary, and cinematic storytelling while discovering the unforgettable life of Vincent van Gogh. Before we begin, comment "Ready" if you want more emotional English stories like this, and subscribe if you love learning English through powerful real-life stories. Vincent van Gogh was born on March 30th, 1853, in a quiet village in the Netherlands called Zundert. Cold winds moved across empty fields. Gray clouds covered the sky. The village was silent, and strangely, so was the little boy. But Vincent's story began with something deeply disturbing. 1 year before his birth, his parents had another baby boy. That child died the same day he was born. His name was also Vincent van Gogh. Can you imagine growing up and seeing your own name written on a gravestone? Every Sunday, young Vincent walked past the church cemetery and saw these words carved into stone. Vincent van Gogh, born March 30th, 1852. Died March 30th, 1852. It was as if another Vincent had died, and he was living in his shadow. His father was a strict Protestant pastor. A pastor is a Christian religious leader. His mother was emotionally distant and serious. Vincent was different from other children. He was quiet, sensitive, intense. While other boys played outside, Vincent wandered alone through nature for hours, staring at birds, trees, and dark moving clouds. People often thought he was strange, but one person truly understood him: his younger brother, Theo. Theo listened to Vincent's fears. Theo defended him. Theo believed in him even when nobody else did. And without Theo, Vincent might not have survived at all. At age 11, Vincent was sent to boarding school. The loneliness became unbearable. He cried. He wrote desperate letters, home begging to return. But his father wanted him to become strong. Instead, the sadness inside him grew deeper. Years later, Vincent began working for an art company called Goupil & Ca. An art dealer is someone who sells paintings. For the first time, art surrounded him every day. He worked in London and later Paris. At first, life seemed hopeful. Then he fell in love. Her name was Ursula. Vincent imagined marriage, happiness, a normal future. But when he confessed his feelings, Ursula laughed and revealed she was already engaged to another man. That moment shattered him. Suddenly, Vincent changed. The cheerful young employee disappeared. In his place came a lonely, obsessive man, consumed by religion and emotional pain. He stopped caring about customers. He quoted Bible verses at work. He pushed people away. Soon he lost his job. But then, Vincent became convinced he had discovered his true purpose. He would become a preacher, like his father, so he traveled to a poor coal-mining region in Belgium. And this became one of the darkest chapters of his life. The miners lived like ghosts underground. Their faces were covered in black coal dust. Their lungs were damaged from years of breathing smoke and dirt. Children walked barefoot through freezing mud. Vincent was horrified. Instead of preaching comfortably from a church, he chose to live like the miners themselves. He slept on the floor. He gave away his clothes. He starved beside them. He believed suffering brought him closer to God. But the church leaders were shocked. They called him unstable, too emotional, too extreme. And once again, Vincent was rejected. At 27 years old, he had failed in love, failed in work, and now failed in religion. He had no money, no future, no direction. One freezing evening, Vincent sat alone inside a small room lit by a weak candle. Outside, exhausted miners walked silently through the snow. Inside, Vincent stared at rough sketches he had drawn of their tired faces, and suddenly, something changed. A terrifying realization entered his mind. If I cannot speak to people with words, maybe I can speak with paintings. That single thought transformed art history forever. Vincent decided he would become a painter. But there was one huge problem. He had absolutely no formal training. Most artists begin as children. Vincent started at 27. People thought he was ridiculous. Even his own family doubted him. But Vincent became obsessed. Obsessed means unable to stop thinking about something. He practiced anatomy for endless hours. Anatomy means the structure of the human body. He studied hands, faces, shadows, light. He drew peasants, workers, broken shoes, old chairs, tired eyes. He barely slept. Sometimes he forgot to eat for days. Here is the surprise. Vincent did not want to paint beautiful, rich people. He wanted to paint suffering, because suffering was the world he understood best. One of the most emotional moments of this period happened when he met a woman named Sienne. She was poor, pregnant, abandoned, and struggling to survive with her daughter. Most people looked at her with disgust. Vincent looked at her and saw pain. So he invited her into his home. Imagine this scene. A freezing gray afternoon. Rain hitting the windows. A lonely painter sitting beside a struggling woman while her child sleeps quietly nearby. Vincent sketches her face by candlelight. Not because she was famous, not because she was beautiful, but because he believed broken people deserved to be seen. That belief would define his art forever. But society attacked him for the relationship. His family called it shameful. Friends abandoned him. Even his art mentor stopped supporting him. And once again, Vincent was alone. After 2 painful years, the relationship collapsed under poverty and emotional pressure. The heartbreak destroyed him. But then, something extraordinary happened. The pain inside Vincent began appearing in his paintings. Dark colors covered the canvas. Brown, black, deep gray shadows. And in 1885, Vincent created his first major masterpiece, The Potato Eaters. The painting showed a poor family eating potatoes beneath weak yellow light after exhausting physical labor. Their faces looked rough and exhausted. Their hands looked dirty and damaged from years of work. Critics hated it. They called it ugly, clumsy, primitive. Vincent was devastated, but he wrote something unforgettable to Theo. "I would rather paint one honest face full of wrinkles than 100 smooth faces full of lies." That sentence explains Vincent van Gogh better than anything else. He did not paint beauty. He painted truth. Throughout all these difficult years, Theo remained beside him like a guardian angel. Every month, Theo sent money for food, paint, and brushes. Without Theo, Vincent could not continue, and Vincent knew it. Almost every emotional letter he wrote ended with gratitude, guilt, or apology, because deep inside, Vincent feared one terrible thing more than failure. He feared becoming a burden to the only person who still loved him. By 1886, Vincent realized something important. If he stayed in the dark villages of Holland, he would disappear completely. He needed change, light, energy, color. So he packed his brushes, canvases, and unfinished dreams and boarded a train to Paris. He did not know it yet, but Paris would transform him forever. It would introduce him to brilliant artists, dangerous friendships, explosive color, and the first terrifying signs of madness. At this point in the story, do you think Vincent van Gogh was becoming a genius or slowly destroying himself? Comment genius or destroyed below. When Vincent van Gogh arrived in Paris in 1886, his brother Theo barely recognized him. Vincent looked thin, exhausted, almost ghost-like. His clothes were worn out. His eyes looked restless. But under his arm, he carried the thing he valued most in the world, his paintings. Theo studied them carefully, dark colors, heavy shadows, sad faces. And then Theo quietly explained something shocking. Art is changing. Paris was exploding with a new movement called Impressionism. Impressionism focused on light, color, and movement instead of dark emotional realism. At first, Vincent hated it. He saw paintings full of bright gardens, blue skies, dancing sunlight, and colorful streets. He thought it looked shallow, too cheerful, too soft. But then, he stood in front of paintings by Claude Monet and Camille Pissarro, and something inside him awakened. For the first time, Vincent realized color itself could carry emotion. Yellow could feel alive. Blue could feel lonely. Red could feel violent. Suddenly, his world changed forever. Imagine the scene. Vincent standing silently inside a Paris gallery. Paintings glowing around him. Bright reds, electric blues, golden sunlight exploding from the canvas. And slowly, the darkness inside his own art began turning into color. This transformation happened fast. Within 2 years, Vincent completely changed his style. Gone were the muddy browns and blacks. Now his paintings burned with orange, yellow, green, purple, and deep blue. His brushstrokes became wild and emotional. Paint covered the canvas in thick layers called impasto. Impasto means paint applied so thickly you can see and feel its texture. Vincent no longer painted what the eye saw. He painted what the heart felt. But while his art became brighter, his mind became darker. He worked obsessively. Sometimes he painted 3 or 4 canvases in a single day. He drank coffee constantly, smoked endlessly, barely slept, and the more emotional his paintings became, the more unstable he seemed. Still, other artists noticed his talent. Vincent met painters who would later become legendary. Paul Gauguin, Henri Toulouse-Lautrec, Émile Bernard. They argued about art in noisy cafes late into the night. They debated beauty, suffering, religion, truth, and madness. But Vincent struggled socially. He was intense, emotionally explosive, painfully honest. Some artists admired him. Others avoided him completely. One man would change Vincent's life more than anyone else: Paul Gauguin. Gauguin was confident, proud, and charismatic. Charismatic means naturally attractive and influential. Vincent admired him deeply. He dreamed of creating an artist community where painters could live and work together like brothers. So, in 1888, Vincent left Paris and traveled south to a small town called Arles, and there, everything became brighter and more dangerous. The sunlight in southern France overwhelmed him. Golden wheat fields stretched endlessly beneath blue skies. Orange sunsets burned across the horizon. For the first time in years, Vincent felt something close to happiness. He rented a small yellow house. The yellow house. To him, it was not just a building, it was a dream. He imagined artists painting together, sharing ideas, creating beauty as a family. And while living there, Vincent entered the most creative period of his life. He painted fields, stars, trees, cafes glowing at night, and most famously, sunflowers. Simple flowers became explosions of emotion beneath his brush. Some sunflowers looked alive and proud. Others looked tired and dying, because Vincent saw himself inside them. Even fading flowers, he believed, still contained beauty. Then came one of the most important moments of his life. Paul Gauguin agreed to move into the yellow house. Vincent was overjoyed. Imagine this scene. Vincent nervously preparing Gauguin's bedroom, hanging sunflower paintings on the walls, cleaning the tiny house again and again, like a lonely child finally welcoming a friend home. At first, it felt magical. The two painters worked side by side. They walked through fields together, discussing art and philosophy. But underneath the friendship, a storm was growing. Vincent and Gauguin were completely different. Vincent was emotional and fragile. Gauguin was cold and dominant. Their arguments became louder every week. Vincent feared something terrible, that Gauguin would leave him, just like everyone else eventually did. And then, the nightmare arrived. On December 23, 1888, the two men had a violent argument. Nobody knows exactly what happened that night. Some say they fought about art. Others believe jealousy and emotional instability exploded between them. But after Gauguin walked away into the darkness, Vincent suffered a complete mental breakdown. And what happened next shocked the world forever. Vincent took a razor blade and cut off part of his own ear. Not a small wound, a horrifying act of desperation. Bleeding heavily, confused and emotionally shattered, Vincent wrapped the ear in cloth and delivered it to a woman at a nearby brothel. Then he collapsed. The next morning, the town was in panic. The crazy painter has gone mad. Children were frightened of him. Neighbors avoided him. Gauguin left immediately and never returned. And just like that, Vincent's dream of artistic brotherhood was destroyed. But here is the unbelievable part. Even after this breakdown, Vincent kept painting. Bandages wrapped around his head, hands trembling from exhaustion, mind collapsing into chaos. Still, he painted, because painting was no longer a career. It was survival. Soon, Vincent voluntarily entered a mental asylum in Saint-Rémy. An asylum is a hospital for people with severe mental illness. The building had cold stone walls and iron-barred windows. At night, the wind echoed through the halls like ghosts, moving in darkness. Most people would have surrendered to despair there. Vincent created masterpieces. Every morning, he carried his paints outside and studied olive trees, cypress trees, gardens, mountains, and endless skies. Doctors noticed something strange. When Vincent painted, he became calm, as if art temporarily silenced the storm inside his mind. Then, one sleepless night, Vincent stared through the window of his asylum room. The sky seemed alive. Stars twisted and pulsed like living fire. Clouds swirled across deep blue darkness. The moon glowed above the silent village below, and suddenly, Vincent began painting one of the most famous artworks in human history. The Starry Night. Imagine that moment. A lonely man trapped inside an asylum, painting eternity beneath a spinning sky. The painting was not realistic. The stars looked alive. The sky moved like waves. The giant black cypress tree rose toward heaven like dark flame. Because Vincent was not painting reality, he was painting emotion, and somehow, the entire world could feel it. But the peace never lasted long. Vincent suffered terrifying mental episodes. He heard voices, collapsed from seizures, forgot where he was. A seizure is a sudden, uncontrolled physical attack caused by illness in the brain. Sometimes he could not paint for days. And yet, after every breakdown, he returned to the canvas again, and again. Can you imagine that kind of determination? A man fighting his own mind every day, still creating beauty for the world. During this period, Theo remained his lifeline. Theo sent money, paint, emotional support, and endless encouragement. Without Theo's love, Vincent may not have survived those years. Then in 1890, something emotional happened. Theo named his newborn son after Vincent. Vincent Willem van Gogh. When Vincent read the letter, he cried. For the first time, he felt maybe his life had meaning after all. But inside him, fear still lived. He worried Theo was exhausted from supporting him financially. He worried he was becoming a burden, and that guilt slowly consumed him. Later that year, Vincent moved to a quiet village called Auvers-sur-Oise, near Paris. There he painted obsessively. More than 70 paintings in about 70 days. Fields, churches, portraits, stormy skies. He painted as if time itself was chasing him. Then came the final heartbreaking scene. A warm July afternoon in 1890. Vincent walked alone into a wheat field, carrying painting supplies and a revolver. Golden wheat moved beneath the wind. Black crows circled above him beneath a darkening sky. Hours later, a gunshot echoed across the fields. That evening, villagers saw Vincent slowly walking back toward the inn, holding his bleeding chest. He climbed the stairs alone. When people rushed to help him, Vincent whispered softly, "I wanted to kill myself." Theo arrived the next day and stayed beside his brother's bed. Imagine this scene. Two brothers sitting together in silence. One dying, one heartbroken. Theo holding Vincent's hand while the painter who changed art forever struggled to breathe. Late in the night of July 29th, 1890, Vincent van Gogh died in Theo's arms. He was only 37 years old. Almost nobody cared. He sold very few paintings during his lifetime. Many people still believed he was insane. But then, history changed. After Vincent's death, Theo also became sick with grief. and died only months later. It seemed like the tragic story had ended. But one woman refused to let Vincent disappear. Theo's wife, Jo van Gogh Bonger. She preserved Vincent's paintings and letters. She organized exhibitions. She showed the world the emotional genius hidden behind the madman. Slowly, people began to understand. The same paintings once mocked as ugly became priceless treasures. Museums fought to display them. Collectors spent fortunes buying them. Today, Vincent van Gogh is considered one of the greatest artists in human history. His paintings hang inside the world's most famous museums, and millions of people stand before them in silence, feeling emotions they cannot explain, because Vincent did not paint objects. He painted loneliness, hope, fear, pain, love. He painted what it feels like to be human. Vincent van Gogh died believing he was a failure, but the world was simply too late to understand him. He taught us that genius is not perfection. Sometimes genius looks like loneliness, like obsession, like pain nobody else can see. He showed us that broken people can still create extraordinary beauty. And perhaps the most powerful lesson of all is this: even if the world does not understand you today, your truth still matters. Your voice still matters. Your light still matters. Somewhere, someday, someone may finally see the beauty inside your struggle. Just like the world finally saw Vincent van Gogh. And even now, more than a century later, his stars are still shining. Lessons. Pain can become creativity if you refuse to give up. One person believing in you can change your entire life. The world may misunderstand you at first, but truth and passion can outlive time. Do you believe Vincent van Gogh was destroyed by madness or made immortal because of it? Comment madness or genius below. And if this story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional English stories that help you learn vocabulary, listening, and real human emotion through history.